a broken cowboy hid from the world. Until an Apache woman arrived on a dying horse, the cowboy lived in a quiet place where the land seemed to stretch forever. The open plains rolled gently under the wide sky, and the wind carried the soft sound of grass moving like waves in a slow river. His small cabin stood alone near a line of low hills, far from the town and far from the paths most people used. He had built it with his own hands, using old wood and stone, not because it was easy, but because the work kept his mind busy. When his hands were tired, his thoughts were quiet. That was how he liked it. Each morning he woke before the sun. The sky was still dark blue when he stepped outside, pulling his worn jacket close around him. He walked to the small pen where his horses rested and checked their water and food. He moved slowly, gently, like someone who did not want to wake the world. He spoke little, but when he did, it was only to the animals. They did not ask questions. They did not remind him of the past. They only listened. The cowboy had not always lived this way. Long ago, he had been part of a small town where people knew his name and waved when he passed by. He had shared meals, laughter, and plans for the future, but life had taken turns he did not expect. People he cared for were no longer there. Dreams he once held had faded like old paint in the sun. The weight of those memories grew heavy in his chest, and one day he chose to walk away from everything familiar. So he came to this quiet land, where the only sound at night was the wind and the distant call of birds. He told himself he was safer here. No one could remind him of what he had lost if no one came at all. The silence became his shield. The wide sky became his only witness. As the days passed, his life followed the same simple pattern. He fixed fences, checked water wells, and walked the edges of his land. He cooked simple meals over a small fire and ate alone at a rough wooden table. At night he sat outside and watched the stars, letting their soft light fill the empty spaces inside him. He told himself this was enough. One evening, as the sun lowered and painted the sky with soft orange and pink colors, the cowboy noticed something moving far across the open land. At first it was only a dark shape against the light. He stood still, his hand resting on the fence, squinting to see better. The shape moved slowly, unevenly, like it might fall at any moment. He felt a small spark of worry, but he pushed it aside. Many animals crossed this land. It was not his place to follow every shadow. Still, something about the way the shape moved made him stay where he was. As it came closer, he saw it was a horse. Its head hung low, and its steps were weak. On its back sat a woman, leaning forward, her hands tight on the reins. Her long hair moved gently in the wind, and her shoulders looked tired, like they carried more than just the weight of her body. The cowboy's heart beat faster. He had not seen another person in a long time. His first thought was to step back, to let them pass and return to his quiet world. But the horse stumbled, nearly falling, and the woman leaned forward, trying to steady it. Without thinking, the cowboy opened the gate and walked toward them. The horse stopped a few steps away from him, its sides moving fast as it tried to catch its breath. The woman looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. For a moment neither of them spoke. The land felt very still, like it was waiting. The woman slid slowly off the horse and nearly fell to the ground. The cowboy reached out and caught her arm, helping her stand. She was lighter than he expected, and he could feel how weak she was. "Thank you," she said in a quiet voice. He nodded, unsure of what to say. Words felt strange on his tongue after so long. The horse lowered itself to the ground, resting in the dust. The cowboy looked at it and then back at the woman. He pointed toward his cabin. "You can rest there," he said, his voice rough from not being used much. She nodded, relief showing on her face. He walked beside her as they moved toward the cabin. She took slow steps, and he matched her pace. The sky above them grew darker, and the first stars began to appear. Inside the cabin, he laid a clean blanket on the small bed and helped her sit down. He brought her a cup of water, watching as she drank carefully. Her hands trembled a little, but her eyes were steady. "I did not know if I would make it," she said. He did not ask where she had come from or where she was going. He only nodded again and said, "You are here now." He stepped outside to check on the horse. He brought water and some food, placing it near the animal. The horse lifted its head and drank slowly. The cowboy felt a strange sense of care rise inside him, like an old feeling he had not used in a long time. When he went back inside, the woman was sitting up, wrapped in the blanket. She looked around the cabin, taking in the simple walls, the small table, and the few tools hanging by the door. "You live far from everything," she said. "Yes," he replied. "Why?" He paused. He could have said many things, but none of them felt right. "It is quiet here," he finally said. She studied his face for a moment, as if she could see more than he wanted to show. Then she nodded. "Sometimes quiet helps. Sometimes it makes things louder." Her words stayed with him. He turned away and started a small fire to warm the room. The light from the flames danced on the walls, making soft shadows move like living things. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the crackle of the fire and the wind outside. The woman closed her eyes, and her breathing grew slow and steady. The cowboy watched her, feeling something change inside him. His quiet world, which had felt safe and still for so long, now felt different. It felt like a door had opened, even if just a little. The morning light slipped gently through the small window of the cabin, touching the wooden floor and the edge of the table. The cowboy woke before the sun fully rose, as he always did. For a moment, he forgot that someone else was there. Then he heard a soft breath from the bed, slow and steady, and he remembered. The woman was still asleep, wrapped in the blanket he had given her. Her face looked calmer now, like the long journey had finally let go of her for a while. The cowboy moved quietly so he would not wake her. He pulled on his boots and stepped outside into the cool morning air. The land was quiet and fresh. A thin mist hovered close to the ground, and the sky was painted with pale blue and soft gold. He walked toward the horse, which stood near the fence, its head lifted and ears alert. The animal looked stronger than the night before, though it still moved slowly. He filled a bucket with water and carried it over. The horse drank deeply, and the cowboy gently placed his hand on its neck. The warmth under his palm felt steady and real. He did not rush the moment. He let the quiet stay. After checking the fences and making sure everything was in place, he returned to the cabin. The smell of dry wood and old smoke greeted him as he stepped inside. He placed a small pan on the fire and started to prepare a simple meal. The soft sound of cooking filled the space, and soon the woman stirred. She sat up slowly, blinking at the light. "Good morning," she said. "Morning," he replied. She smiled faintly. "I slept better than I expected," he nodded. "The land is calm here." She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and stood carefully. Her steps were steadier now, though she still moved with care. She walked to the table and sat down while he placed a plate in front of her. They ate in silence at first. The food was simple, but it was warm, and that seemed to matter more than anything else. The woman looked around the cabin again, as if she was noticing new details. "You built this place yourself?" she asked. "Yes, it feels like it carries your hands in every part of it." He thought about that. He had never seen it that way before. To him, it had only been shelter. Now, it felt like something more. After they finished eating, she stood and offered to help clean up. He hesitated, then handed her a cloth. They worked together in the small space, moving carefully around each other. Their hands brushed once, just for a moment. Both of them paused, then continued without speaking. Later, they stepped outside together. The sun was fully up now, and the land glowed with light. The wind carried the smell of grass and earth. The woman took a deep breath and closed her eyes. "This place feels alive," she said, "like it listens." The cowboy looked at the open land, the hills, and the wide sky. He had lived here so long that he had stopped noticing its beauty. Seeing it through her eyes made it feel new again. They walked toward the horse. The woman approached slowly, speaking softly to it. The horse lifted its head and moved closer to her. She placed her hand on its face, and the animal leaned into her touch. "You did well," she said gently. The cowboy watched, feeling a quiet sense of respect for the way she moved, the way she treated the land and the animal like they were part of her, not just things around her. They sat on a fallen log nearby, letting the sun warm their faces. The woman began to speak about her journey. She told him about the places she had passed through, the rivers she had crossed, and the people she had met along the way. Some were kind, some were distant, and some were lost in their own struggles. She spoke about her people and the old stories she had learned as a child. Stories about listening to the wind, watching the stars, and finding strength in quiet moments. The cowboy listened closely. He did not interrupt. He did not rush her. He let her words settle inside him. When she finished, there was a long pause. "Why did you come all this way?" he finally asked. She looked out at the horizon. "I was looking for a place that felt like it could be home," she said. "Not just a place to stay, but a place to breathe." He understood that more than he expected. They spent the rest of the morning walking the land together. He showed her the well he had dug, the small garden he tried to keep alive, and the fence lines that marked the edge of his world. She asked questions, curious about everything. Her interest made him feel like his simple life had value. At one point they reached a small hill that overlooked the plains. The view stretched far and wide, and the sky felt close enough to touch. They stood there, side by side, looking out. "I used to think this place was too empty," she said. "Now I think it is full of space for people to find themselves." The words stayed with him. In the afternoon, a cloud passed over the sun and the air grew cooler. They returned to the cabin, where the woman sat and rested. The cowboy worked on a broken chair, fixing a loose leg. She watched him, her eyes thoughtful. "You work like someone who does not want to stop moving," she said. He paused, then continued. "If I stop, I think too much." She nodded slowly. "Sometimes thinking is not the enemy. Sometimes it is the path." He did not answer, but he felt the truth in her words. As the day moved on, the sound of distant footsteps reached them. The cowboy looked up, alert. A traveler was walking along a far trail, moving slowly but steadily. The cowboy felt a familiar tension rise in his chest. He had grown used to being alone. The idea of another person near his land made him uneasy. The woman noticed his change in posture. "We can offer water," she said gently. He hesitated. Then he nodded. The traveler approached, a tired look on his face. They shared water and a few words. The conversation was simple and brief, but it felt important. When the traveler thanked them and continued on his way, the cowboy felt something shift inside him. The world did not feel as distant as it once had. As the sun began to set, the woman and the cowboy sat outside, watching the colors fill the sky. The light turned the land gold and red, and long shadows stretched across the ground. "You do not have to hide here forever," she said softly. He looked at her, surprised. "I am not saying you should leave," she continued. "I am only saying you should remember that you can." He thought about the town he had left behind, the people he had not seen in years, and the road that led beyond his fences. The idea no longer felt as heavy as it once had. That night, as they sat by the fire inside the cabin, the woman shared a quiet song from her childhood. Her voice was gentle, and the sound filled the small space with warmth. The cowboy listened, feeling something inside him soften. When the song ended, they sat in silence, but it was a different kind of quiet now. It was not empty. It was full of shared moments and unspoken understanding. As he lay down to rest, the cowboy realized that his world had grown larger in just one day. The land was still wide and quiet, but now it held two stories instead of one. And for the first time in a long while, he felt ready to see where those stories might lead. The next morning began with a soft sound of wind moving through the tall grass. The cowboy stepped outside and saw the sky painted with pale colors, as if the day itself was waking slowly. The land felt calm, but inside him, something new was stirring. It was not loud or heavy. It was quiet, like a question he had not asked in a long time. The woman joined him a moment later. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and stood beside him, looking at the open plains. The horse stood nearby, stronger now, its coat shining in the early light. "It feels like the land is holding its breath," she said. He nodded. "It does that sometimes." They shared a simple breakfast and then walked together toward the small garden behind the cabin. The plants were small and uneven, but they were alive. The woman knelt down and touched the soil, letting it run through her fingers. "This ground has been cared for," she said. "It remembers that." He had never thought of the land as something that could remember. He had only seen it as something that needed work. Her words made him look at it in a new way. They spent the morning tending the plants and fixing a loose fence post. The woman helped where she could, handing him tools and holding the wood steady while he worked. Their movements began to feel easy, like they had done this together many times before. As the sun climbed higher, the cowboy felt the warmth on his back and the steady rhythm of the day. He realized he was not counting the hours anymore. He was simply living in them. Later, they walked toward a small stream that ran through the lower part of the land. The water moved gently over smooth stones, making a soft sound that filled the quiet air. The woman crouched down and touched the water. "This place feels like it is meant for stories," she said. "The kind people carry with them, even when they leave." He sat on a nearby rock. "I stopped carrying my story a long time ago," he said. She looked at him, her eyes kind and steady. "Stories do not leave, they wait." Her words stayed with him as they sat there, watching the water move past them. He thought about the life he had before, the town, the faces he remembered, and the road that led away from it all. He had believed he left his story behind, but now he wondered if it had been following him all along. On their way back, they noticed a small bird with a hurt wing near the path. It fluttered weakly, unable to lift itself into the air. The woman knelt down carefully and spoke in a calm, gentle voice. The cowboy brought a small box from the cabin, and together they made a safe place for the bird to rest. They carried it inside and placed it near the window where the light could reach it. The woman checked its wing gently, and the cowboy brought water and food. They worked together without speaking, their focus on the small, fragile life in front of them. When they finished, the woman smiled softly. "Sometimes helping something else helps us too," she said. He felt the truth of that in his chest. In the afternoon, clouds began to gather in the sky. The light grew softer, and the air felt cooler. They sat inside the cabin, listening to the wind pick up outside. The woman told him more about her journey. She spoke about the people she had met who were searching for new beginnings, and about the places that felt empty even when they were full of noise. She said she believed the land and the people who walk on it are connected, even when they do not realize it. The cowboy listened, thinking about his own connection to this place. He had chosen it because it was far from everything. Now, he began to see that it had been giving him something all along, even when he did not know how to receive it. A soft rain began to fall, tapping gently against the roof. The sound filled the cabin, steady and calming. The woman closed her eyes and smiled. "This sound always makes me feel like the world is being washed clean," she said. He watched the rain through the window, the drops sliding down the glass like slow-moving lines. He felt lighter, as if something inside him was being washed too. As the rain faded, the sky opened again, and a soft light returned to the land. They stepped outside and breathed in the fresh air. Everything looked brighter, greener, and new. They walked to the horse, which lifted its head and stepped forward. The woman stroked its neck, and the animal stood strong and calm. "He is ready to move again," she said. The cowboy felt a small ache in his chest at her words. He had known this moment would come. He just had not expected it to feel so soon. They sat near the cabin as the evening approached. The sky filled with warm colors, and the land glowed softly. "You have a good place here," she said. "It holds quiet, but it also holds space for more." He looked at the horizon. "I did not think I needed more." She smiled gently. "We do not always know what we need until it finds us." They shared a simple meal by the fire that night. The small bird in the box moved a little, showing signs of strength. The woman looked at it with hope in her eyes. "Tomorrow it may try to fly again," she said. The cowboy nodded. "I hope it does." When the fire burned low, they sat in silence. It was not the kind of silence he used to hide in. It was a kind that felt shared. As he lay down to rest, he stared at the ceiling of the cabin and thought about the road beyond his fences. For the first time, he did not see it as something to avoid. He saw it as something that might lead him back to parts of himself he had forgotten. Outside, the stars filled the sky, steady and bright. Inside, the cowboy felt a quiet sense of change settle into his heart. He did not came. The morning came with a soft glow that spread across the land like a gentle promise. The cowboy woke before the woman this time. He stepped outside and felt the cool air touch his face. The sky was clear, and the light of the rising sun painted the hills in warm colors. He stood still for a moment, listening to the quiet. It no longer felt empty. It felt like a space waiting to be filled. He walked toward the small box near the window where the bird rested. The bird moved its head and fluttered its wings lightly. The cowboy smiled to himself, a small and simple smile that surprised him. The woman joined him a few minutes later. She looked at the bird and knelt down slowly. "It looks stronger," she said. "Yes," he replied. "It might be ready soon." They shared a simple breakfast and then stepped outside together. The horse stood nearby, calm and steady, its coat shining in the morning light. The woman placed her hand on its neck and the animal leaned into her touch. "I think today is a day for listening," she said. The cowboy raised an eyebrow. "Listening to what?" She smiled. "To the land, to ourselves." They began walking along a path that led past the stream and into a wider part of the plains. The grass moved gently in the wind, and the sound followed them like a soft song. The cowboy noticed things he had not paid attention to before, the way the clouds slowly changed shape, the way the ground felt under his boots, the way the air carried the smell of earth and water. They reached a place where the land opened into a wide view of the horizon. The woman stopped and looked out. "This feels like a place where people make choices," she said. The cowboy thought about that. He had made one big choice when he came here. He had chosen to leave everything behind. Now, standing in this open space, he wondered what other choices he had been avoiding. They sat on the ground, side by side, and let the time pass without rushing it. The woman spoke about her family, the stories her elders used to tell around the fire. Stories about journeys, about people who left and people who returned, and about how the land remembered every step taken on it. The cowboy listened closely. He felt like he was hearing parts of himself in her words, even though she spoke of a life so different from his own. After a while, he spoke. "I used to believe leaving was the only way to survive," he said. "I thought if I stayed, the memories would never stop." She looked at him gently. "And did leaving make them stop?" He thought for a moment. "No," he admitted. "It just made them quieter." She nodded. "Quiet can be good, but sometimes memories want to be heard, not hidden." They walked back toward the cabin as the sun moved higher in the sky. Along the way, they noticed a group of travelers in the distance, moving slowly along a far trail. The cowboy felt a familiar tension rise in him, but it was different now. It was not fear. It was uncertainty. The woman noticed his expression. "You do not have to go to them," she said, "but you do not have to turn away either." He stood still for a moment, then took a step forward. They walked together toward the travelers. When they met, they shared water and simple words. The travelers spoke about the road ahead, about places they had been and places they hoped to reach. The cowboy listened, feeling like he was touching a world he had kept at a distance for too long. When the travelers continued on their way, he felt a small sense of pride for not turning back. As the afternoon passed, they returned to the cabin. The woman helped him fix a small roof panel that had been loose for a while. They worked together, handing each other tools, laughing softly when something slipped or did not fit right. The sound of their laughter felt new to the cowboy. It surprised him, but it also felt right. Later, the woman checked on the bird. It flapped its wings more strongly now, lifting itself slightly off the ground. She smiled with hope. "I think it will fly before the sun sets," she said. They carried the box outside and placed it in a quiet spot near the fence. They stepped back and waited. The bird stood still for a moment, then fluttered its wings and lifted into the air. It was not smooth or fast, but it was enough. The bird rose and disappeared into the wide sky. The woman clapped her hands softly. The cowboy felt a warmth in his chest as he watched the small shape vanish. "Sometimes," she said, "leaving is not running away. Sometimes it is just moving forward." The words stayed with him. As evening approached, the sky filled with soft colors again. They sat near the fire outside, letting the warmth reach their hands and faces. The land around them glowed in the fading light. The woman spoke quietly. "I will be leaving soon." The cowboy felt the words settle heavily in him, even though he had known they were coming. He looked at the fire instead of at her. "I did not come here to stay forever," she continued. "I came to find a part of myself. I think I found it here." He nodded. "I think I did too." They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled softly and the wind moved through the grass. "You do not have to stay here alone," she said gently. "You can walk back into the world if you choose." He took a deep breath. "I am not sure I know how." She smiled. "You already took the first steps. You listened. You spoke. You welcomed others." He thought about the travelers, the shared water, the small conversations. They seemed small, but now he saw how much they had meant. That night, inside the cabin, they shared a simple meal. The space felt warm and full, even with just the two of them. The cowboy realized that his cabin, once a place of hiding, now felt like a place of gathering. When it was time to rest, he lay awake for a while, listening to the soft sounds of the night. He thought about the bird flying into the sky, the travelers moving down the road, and the woman preparing to continue her journey. For the first time in years, he did not feel afraid of what came next. He felt curious. Outside, the stars filled the sky, steady and bright. Inside, the cowboy felt something steady and bright growing within him, too. He did not know where his path would lead, but he knew now that he did not have to walk it alone, even if he walked it by himself. The land, the people who passed through it, and the stories they carried all felt connected. And in that connection, the cowboy found a quiet kind of strength he had been missing for a long time. Not now what the next day would bring, but he felt ready to meet it, wherever it might lead. The last morning came softly, like it did not want to disturb the peace that had settled over the land. The cowboy woke before the light touched the hills. He lay still for a moment, listening to the quiet sounds of the night fading away. A distant bird called out. The wind brushed against the cabin walls. Everything felt calm, but his chest felt full, like something important was waiting to happen. He stepped outside and saw the sky changing from deep blue to gentle gold. The land looked wide and open, just as it always had, but it no longer felt empty. It felt like a place that held memories, moments, and new beginnings all at once. The woman joined him, carrying her small pack. She stood beside him without speaking at first. They both looked toward the horizon, where the long road disappeared into the soft light.
"It feels like a good day to move forward," she said quietly.
He nodded. "It does." They shared a simple breakfast together. The food was plain, but the moment felt rich. Every small sound, every movement felt important, like it was being saved in his memory. When they finished, the woman walked to the horse and began to prepare for the journey. The animal stood strong and calm, its eyes bright. The cowboy helped tighten the straps and check the pack. Their hands moved easily, like they had done this many times before, even though it was the first. He felt a strange mix of feelings inside him. There was a soft sadness, but also a steady warmth. "You gave me more than rest," she said. "You gave me a place to remember who I am." He looked at her, unsure of what to say.
"You did the same for me," he finally replied.
She smiled. Then we both found what we needed. They walked to the fence near the edge of his land. The road beyond it stretched far and wide, leading toward the town he had left behind long ago. The cowboy felt his heart beat a little faster as he looked at it. He had avoided this path for years. Now, it felt like it was calling him, not with pressure, but with quiet invitation. The woman noticed his gaze. "You do not have to decide everything today," she said. "You only have to take one step when you are ready." He took a deep breath. "I think I am closer to ready than I was yesterday." She placed her hand on the fence and looked back at the cabin, the small garden, and the open land around it. "This place will always be part of you," she said, "no matter where you go." He felt the truth of that settle inside him. The woman climbed onto the horse. The animal shifted its weight and stood steady. She looked down at the cowboy, her eyes kind and clear. "Thank you for seeing me when I arrived," she said, "even when you did not want to see anyone." He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Thank you for not turning away when you saw me." She nodded once, then gently guided the horse forward. The animal began to move down the road, slow and steady at first, then with more confidence. The cowboy walked alongside for a short while, matching the pace. They did not speak. They did not need to. At the place where the path split, the woman stopped. She reached down and touched his shoulder. "Take care of your story," she said. "It is still being written." He nodded. "So is yours." She smiled and turned the horse toward the open road. The cowboy stood and watched as she moved farther away, her shape growing smaller against the wide land. He stayed there until she was just a dot on the horizon, and then until even that disappeared. For a long moment he did not move. The wind passed by him, carrying the smell of grass and earth. The sun climbed higher, filling the sky with light. The land felt alive around him, like it was waiting to see what he would do next. He turned back toward the cabin and walked slowly. Inside, the space felt different. It still held the warmth of shared meals, quiet talks, and small moments of care. He looked at the table, the bed, the tools on the wall. He realized that this place had not just been a hiding spot. It had been a place where he learned how to open again. He packed a small bag. He did not take much, just a little food, water, and a few personal things. He left the rest behind, trusting that he could return if he needed to. Before leaving, he stepped outside and looked around one last time. He placed his hand on the fence, feeling the rough wood under his palm. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he opened the gate. The road felt different under his boots. It felt real, solid, and full of possibility. Each step he took felt like a small promise to himself. As he walked, he noticed things he had ignored before. The way the clouds moved slowly across the sky. The way the light changed the color of the land. The sound of distant voices carried by the wind. He reached a small rise and saw the town in the distance. The buildings looked smaller than he remembered, but also more welcoming. He felt a mix of nervousness and hope, but he kept walking. Along the way, he met a traveler heading in the opposite direction. They exchanged a greeting and a few kind words. The moment was simple, but it felt meaningful. It reminded him that every person on the road carried their own story, their own hopes and fears. When he reached the edge of the town, he paused. The sounds were louder here. People talking, footsteps on the ground, doors opening and closing. It felt like stepping into a different world. He took a deep breath and walked forward. Some faces looked familiar. Some did not. A few people nodded at him, and he nodded back. He did not rush. He let himself move at his own pace. He stopped at a small place where people gathered to talk and rest. He sat down and listened. The stories he heard were simple and real. Someone spoke about a new job. Someone else talked about a family member. Someone laughed. The cowboy felt something warm spread through him. He realized that this, too, was part of living. Being among others, sharing space, even in small ways. As the day moved on, he found a place to stay for the night. It was not as quiet as his cabin, but it felt safe. He lay down and looked up at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the town settling into sleep. He thought about the woman riding into the open land, the bird flying into the sky, and himself walking into a place he once ran from. He saw a pattern in it now. Moving forward did not mean leaving everything behind. It meant carrying what mattered with you. The next morning he woke with the sun and stepped outside. The air felt fresh, and the world felt open. He did not know exactly what he would do next, but for the first time in a long time, that did not scare him. He walked down the street, greeting people as he passed. Some returned the greeting with a smile, some simply nodded. It was enough. Far away, the open land still waited. The cabin still stood. The path between the two felt like a bridge, not a barrier. The cowboy realized that he did not have to choose just one place to belong. He could belong to the quiet of the plains and the gentle noise of the town. He could belong to the past and the future, to the road behind him and the road ahead. As he walked, the sun rose higher, filling the sky with light. He felt steady, grounded, and ready. His story was not finished. It was not even close. And somewhere beyond the horizon, another story moved forward too, carried by a woman on a strong horse under the same wide sky. The land, the road, and the people who walked on them were all part of something bigger. The cowboy felt grateful to be part of it again. With calm steps and an open heart, he continued forward, ready to meet whatever the world had waiting for him next.